So sickle cell, it's all about the blood. Yeah, sickle cell is all about the blood. So we need to have a good understanding of the blood. So what is blood? Blood is the body's fluid that carries life to the cells. This is a really big statement. The body's fluid that carries life to the cells. So we've got some pictures here on the screen. Life is in the blood. Life is literally in the blood. And we can see some blood cells there, some red blood cells. And I find this picture here on the left very interesting. Because when you ask people, what does that look like? What would you say that looks like? Anyone?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, it looks like a tree to me.
Yeah, right. So those are the blood vessels that the blood is traveling throughout the body, and it looks like a tree, it looks like roots. So that kind of, in life, you find that there's always a connection between things. So the question that we really need to ask then is, what is life? Because if our blood is carrying life, what is life? And really, when we get to the real basics of things, life is the elements of nature: earth, air, fire, water, and electricity. Based on the accumulation, storage, and usage of the electron, life is electric. So these are really the key components of life. So we're going to see now, how does this really tie in with blood? What is blood actually carrying? What is it made of? Yeah, so blood is made up of 4 components: the white blood cell, platelets, plasma, and the red blood cells. We're just going to quickly go through. So the white blood cells make up approximately 1% of the total blood volume, just 1%, but it's a very important 1%. What the white blood cell does is it forms part of the body's immune system by helping the body to fight off infection and disease. So that's the main role of the white blood cell. Then we have the platelets, which again, the platelets make up less than 1% of the total blood volume. So the platelets are small colorless disc-shaped fragments, and it deals with blood coagulation and wound healing. So what that basically means is clotting. It stops bleeding by clumping and forming plugs in blood vessels during injuries. So that's its main role, is to heal wounds. And then we've got the plasma. Okay, so now the plasma makes up over half of the body's blood volume. It's a liquid made from water, salts, protein. When it's actually extracted from the other components of the blood, it is a light yellow liquid. So the main role of the plasma is to take nutrients, hormones, enzymes, and proteins to the different parts of the body that needs it. Yeah, so it literally carries the blood components throughout the body, and also helps to remove waste products from the body. Little thing here from Dr. Sebi, we want to put things into context as well. He says that sickle cell anemia is when the blood plasma has been broken down by mucus into the sickle. So mucus sinks into the plasma, which then works its way into the actual blood cell and breaks and disunites the cell. So as far as Dr. Sebi is concerned, removing the mucus reunites the cell, which needs a large dose of iron to maintain. So that's just something to bear in mind, because that's dealing with the plasma. And I think the key point here about the plasma is that it's over half of the blood volume and predominantly made up of water. So if we're referring back to life, we've got that component there. The red blood cells is the 4th component, and the red blood cell makes up, up over 40% of the blood's volume. It delivers oxygen to the body's tissues. Its main component is hemoglobin, which is an iron-rich protein, this is very important. Iron is very important because iron is the spark plug of the human body. It's a mineral that conveys oxygen to the brain. It's the only mineral on the planet that is magnetic and has a tendency to pull other minerals to it, such as magnesium, zinc, gold, calcium. So when you are deficient in iron, you are susceptible to many diseases. There is no oxygen going to the brain without iron. Without iron, the body loses energy, the immune system begins to give way, and other things like we wrinkle at a young age, and we're no longer able to stand straight or walk straight. So iron is very important, and we're looking here at more than 40% of the blood volume. So this is why, and this is really relating to sickle cell. So we've kind of looked at life, and we can see where the elements of life are in the blood, and particularly with the electric, because the electric principle in the human body is facilitated by the red blood cell with its iron core. So we can see how our blood is literally carrying life. So in relation to the sickle cell, a low level of hemoglobin is a sign of anemia and cause of iron deficiency. If you don't have enough iron, your body can't make healthy oxygen carrying blood cells. So it is a matter of life. But where are blood cells produced? So we've kind of looked at the what, we know what blood is. Now we're looking at the where are blood cells produced, because this is important for us to understand. So blood produced from the bone marrow is a European school of thought that we are generally taught. The reality is that all bones produce blood in infancy, but once dried and mature, the only moist bones, such as the spinal column, can and should produce blood. Yeah, so the bone's purpose is to produce electricity and to keep the body electrified. So bones are like quartz crystals where you can store a great amount of electricity and electric output if properly taken care of. Yeah, so bones do one of two things. One, they either produce electricity when operating at a state of optimum, doing what it's supposed to do, or two, it reverts back into blood when operating in a state of deficiency. So just to elaborate on that, blood produced from the bone marrow presents a state of deterioration, sickness, and death. Yeah, the bone liquefies and differentiates as a survival mechanism. So it's a process in which the bone marrow reverts back into blood to prevent death. So for every minute that the bones are used to produce blood, one's lifespan is being significantly reduced. Once the bone is no longer able to differentiate, the body's organs are then put under pressure. And we're going to look into this a bit more. So where are the blood cells produced then? If it's not in the bone, where is it produced? The red blood cell is produced in the villi hairs. So the villi hairs are the hairs of the small intestine that's in the stomach. Yeah, healthy villi, and you can see the illustration there. Look it up because you will find some really interesting pictures. So healthy villi produces 3 to 6 million red blood cells per second. The minimum threshold is 3.5 million red blood cells in the bloodstream. So anything below this threshold will affect the body's bones. So if the villi is not able to do what it's supposed to do, and then the body's forced to take blood from the bones, that's literally what's happening. It's the body is using its survival mechanism. So the intestine villi hairs actually determines your lifespan. This goes for all of us, but we're going to bring it back to sickle cell. So intestinal villi and hair. Intestinal villi and hair, we're going to look at this now. So intestinal villi hairs are intimately tied to the hair all over the rest of our bodies. So what you do with one group, you do to all. For example, perms, cuts, presses, braids, locks, all encode new expressions into the DNA, which affects the hair and villi growth. So when we're perming our hair, cutting, pressing, this is actually shocking the DNA, and it's telling the DNA that we don't want the villi to grow in its natural, strong, muscular form. From there, we then we become nutrient deficient. We have dead and flank hair, causing early gray, baldness, yeah? And the villi loses its ability to produce the red blood cells because the condition of the hair on your head, under your arms, is the condition of the villi hairs in your small intestine. So you can tell the quality of the villi by the quality of your hair. Yeah, the strength of the hair is signified by how tight the individual strands of hair curl in on themselves. Just like how water is structured into naps, infinite little numbers of 9. And you will see that in nature and in the universe in different aspects. Even when you're looking at how planets are born, they come in naps of 9. That's the hair. The hair needs to be curling. So the more the hair curls, the stronger it is. The more nutrient dense it is. The more strength of texture it has. Yeah. So with all of those things, the more abundant the red blood cell production is going to be. Because our hair is a living operational device. Yeah. So it can drastically change one's lifespan. So we'll come back to a bit about that, but just to look at, so how is the red blood cell produced? So we've done the what, we've done the where, now the how. Yeah, how is it actually produced? So the villi combines fresh, clean water with Monera to create blood. And Monera is good bacteria derived from healthy living foods. We're always coming back to the same thing. Yeah. And it's the environment of the villi is also very important because the villi needs an acidic environment in the small intestine. A lot of people get very carried away with having an alkaline diet. Alkaline is good, but everything has to come with balance. But the small intestine needs to have some acidity to it. And the reason for that is so that the minerals can be extracted. So an over alkaline small intestine will actually prevent mineral assimilation and digestion. So nutrients, if it's not acidic and it's too alkaline, the nutrients will not be absorbed. Good bacteria dies, the Monera and metabolized iron is not produced, which ruins the villi's ability to produce red blood cells. So this is important for us to understand. So coming back to the sickle cell warrior now, because the sickle cell warrior actually has favor on their side. Because we know that sickle cell predominantly affects, they say, African, Caribbean people, Eastern European? Am I saying the right thing here? Correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're talking about is we're talking about people with high hue and melanin. We're talking about people that are melanated, yeah? And people that are melanated are physically progressive, opposed to those in lack of hue or melanin who are physically degenerative. melanated people naturally have living operational hair, opposed to those with flank dead hair, yeah, producing little to no red blood cells from the villi and are dependent on the bones. So this kind of takes us all the way back to the start of the presentation, where we were saying that bones blood being produced from the bone marrow is a European school of thought. It literally applies to Europeans. It doesn't apply to melanated people, because the condition of our natural hair is where our strength of producing red blood cells comes. And that is why you will find melanated people also have a much denser skeleton, because less blood production is required from the bones. So when you see how different races evolve when we go into old age, you could see, you know, a strong black man in his 80s standing up straight and strong. When you look at a white counterpart, they're usually quite frail and bent over, because they are really dependent on the blood from the bones, whereas we are able to depend on the blood from the villi. So in conclusion and solution, fresh, clean water, whether you're, what's that word now? Sorry guys, my things are just gone out of my head, but fresh, clean water, distilled water, yeah, that's an option. There are other options of water. Healthy living foods and good hair care equals strong villi. You need a good base of iron intake that we recommend that you take from natural living foods. So really, that is really the presentation, and it all boils down to the foods that we're eating and how we're looking after ourselves, how we're looking after our hair, and these things. So what I would recommend, with that being said, you can check out our YouTube catalog, because we do have some material on there about the types of foods that sicklers should be eating for optimum health. And we also have an in-house nutritionalist who has practically cured herself of sickle cell anemia through her diet. And you can purchase her book, which is Create Your Health Naturally. Her name's Frida Gazy. And really that book just contains everything relevant for optimum health that can be directly related to our sickle cell warriors.
Okay, that was fantastic. Brilliant. Great source of information. I'm blown. I do need to ask you to so to clarify, we can, well, I know this for a fact because I'm doing it. I'm a doer, I'm doing it. But to clarify, we can reduce the amount or even the necessity and the reliance of having to go through the process of having a blood transfusion by looking about the foods we eat, the healthy living foods, especially like a raw diet, introducing more iron-rich foods into our diet, good hair care to strengthen the villi, you know, and fresh, clean water, devoid of toxins, basically, you know, spring water, or what's this water called again that you mentioned?
Distilled water.
Distilled water, yeah. I mean, I distilled my water and I still couldn't remember it, you know. So that's great. I mean, I follow Frida's, you know, book, and I also encourage people to purchase it. You can purchase it on Amazon or through the Sickle Cell Cause. It will cost you the same amount of money. And I want to say at this point, Leanne, thank you so much for joining us with your recorded presentation.
No, you're more than welcome. It's a pleasure. There are so many bits and pieces that could be discussed in and out of each slide, but I've kept it really concise. But yeah, you've summarized there really. The point is that you need to know what you're dealing with, and we're dealing with blood, so we need to understand how blood works and what it needs, and give it what it needs so that it can help itself.
basically work with nature, not try to fight it.
Right.
Work with it, Again, thank you.